very much, Pak Roberto, for your understanding.
Yeah.
Goedemorgen, Leo.
Hi,
Yeah,
Leo.
how
Good
are
morning,
you?
everybody. Good afternoon,
Is it?
Hi,
everybody.
Leo.
Good
Het
afternoon.
is al
Good
heel
morning.
Good morning, Leo.
Yeah.
een hele tijd geleden.
Ja, dat is lang geleden.
Ja.
So how are you, Leo?
I'm just fine.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying my retirement. So
Yeah.
I can be very busy now without any problem. So I like it.
Still family matters. Shepherding
Among
your
others,
grandchildren.
all kind of things. But
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
But Pak Robert,
Little-
do you know that Roy? Yeah, did you hear the news about Roy?
Finished? No.
oh, well,
What happened with him?
his dissertation was accepted last week.
Oh, good.
So he will get his PhD probably the first weeks of March next year.
All right, good. Yeah.
Selamat sore, Pak Zain.
Zijn
Pak Zainal. You're still mute, Pak
masih
Zainal.
mute.
Ya, selamat sore Pak Frans.
So what happened with your neighbor?
Well, what Amber mentioned today, there was a building which hosts server
Oh,
of many
yeah.
internet connections. So I got So the electricity was disrupted as well as the internet connection.
Okay.
But I hope it will work.
But we are glad that you're here, Zain.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just one hour ago, it was gone, the internet. Now it's back.
Everyone, I think all the panelists and the respondents and our beloved colleagues and friends already here. Let us start the celebration today. I will start with the video, and the MC will continue with the event. Thank you very much for coming and enjoy our event today, and happy birthday to NMCNC.
Happy birthday.
The road of decolonizations to equalize non-white inferiority and white supremacy is still a steep and winding one. NICMCR brings together perspective from Indonesia and the Netherlands for better understanding of a shared history in order to prepare for a post-colonial future.
Yes, there is diversity among us. This conference is not to oppose each other. It is a conference of brotherhood.
The question is, how far we have come and what do we plan to achieve? Looking back on 10 years of our existence, join and share your ideas and experience in our webinar, Decolonizing Religions in Indonesia and the Netherlands, Unravelling the Legacy of Colonialisms Today.
Recording in progress.
Ladies and gentlemen, Welcome to NICMCR's 10th anniversary webinar, Decolonizing Religions in Indonesia and the Netherlands, Unraveling the Legacy of Colonialism Today. Let us begin our webinar, and please welcome our Master of Ceremony, Amadeo Devin Undampo, Master of Divinity.
Greetings to all of you. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Amadeo. I am going to be the Master of Ceremony for this event on this August occasion. Thank you very much and happy 10th anniversary to the Netherlands-Indonesia Consortium of Muslim-Christian Relations. A lot have been done by the consortium, and now we are celebrating our 10th birthday. So before we get started, I would like to brief you shortly about the rules of the house or the Tata Tertib. Some of you might have seen the rules of the house appearing on your screen before we start this conference or this webinar. So the rules of the house are as follows. For the convenience of participating in this event, participants are expected to comply with the following rules. First, please turn off the microphone during the presentations so as not to disturb the speaker. Participants can write their questions in English or Indonesian anytime during the presentation in the Zoom chat room or the YouTube chat box, because this is going to be live streamed on YouTube as well. Please write down the name of the speakers you wish to ask your questions to, because there are several speakers for this webinar. So if you would like to address your questions specifically to a specific person, a specific speaker or panelist, that would be enormously helpful for the speakers. And then for participants who join the Zoom meeting, if the moderator opens a live Q&A session, you can use the raise hand feature. Please wait until the moderator assigns you to turn on your microphone and ask the question. So you should wait for your turn. The committee will choose 2 questions from the Q&A Zoom feature and 2 questions from the YouTube comments column in each discussion session. And would like also to announce that language interpretation is available for this webinar. Of course, we can only do the Indonesian English and English Indonesian translations for this webinar. So if you'd like to use the language interpretation function, you can just go straight away to the language interpretation feature located on the tool panel on your screen on the right hand side. Okay, so we are now in the very anticipated moment of our webinar or of this celebration. We're gonna hear an opening remark, opening speech, which will be delivered by Dr. Phil Sakiron Syamsuddin, MAG, of the Sunan Kalijaga, UIN Sunan Kalijaga, Yogyakarta. He is the Vice Rector of Finance and General Affairs, UIN Sunan Kalijaga, Yogyakarta, a lecturer at the Faculty of Usuluddin and Islamic Thoughts, UIN Sunan Kalijaga, Yogyakarta. He is also serving as the chair of Indonesian Association for the Science of the Quran and Tafsir. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming the Dr. Phil Sakiron Syamsuddin. Dr. Syamsuddin, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Good afternoon and good morning to you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank the community for giving me the opportunity to represent the Netherlands Indonesia Consortium for Muslim Christian Relations for NICMCR in this joyous and blessed 10th anniversary celebration. I'm truly honored for this opportunity. And ladies and gentlemen, after the 9/11 tragedy, polarization of religious freedom became even more severe than creating misunderstanding both between religions and societies in many parts of the world, including in Indonesia and the Netherlands. This situation encouraged several parties in Indonesia and in the Netherlands to understand the challenges and issues between Islam and Christianity. So when scholars, religious leaders, activists, and many other parties from both countries met in a Kaliurang in 2010, it was only natural that they decided to initiate a network to answer those challenges. And the rest was history. For 10 years, NICMCR has been working hard in building relations between the two countries and religions. We have grown from only a small group within a limited number of participants into a more structured non-profit organization with a more diverse participants background. To implement our visions, we formed the working groups or kelompok kerja or pokja, which are costly tolerance for inclusive religious education, gender and religions, and ecology and religion. I think forming pokjas is one of the NICMCR's important decisions to ensure this network in this right track. It is also a way to reach broader participants. So the goal to build harmonious interrelated. Ladies and gentlemen, a decade might be just a marker of time, but for a non-profit organization, a decade means consistency and commitment to reach its goal. Of course, there are ups and downs along the way, but only with these two important characteristics, an organization can survive and continue its work. And I believe NICMCR has done. And for that, allow me to congratulate this organization for its 10th anniversary. I have been involved in this network since years ago, and I'm proud to be part of it. I hope this organization will continue its work as a network and bridge the religious relationships not only NICMCR. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for your remarkable remarks and for your illustration of the brief history of NICMCR. My friends, before we start our first session today, and before I hand over the microphone to our moderator, Professor Dr. Francis Wyson, whom I will introduce later on, we're going to watch a birthday video that the NICMCR has made for us. The birthday video that documents the history of NICMCR. So I think let us watch the video together.
It's getting bigger if you compare with 2010. The membership is open. Yeah, we always open ourselves to others who want to join us. And there has been 1 or 2 schools in Indonesia asking how to be a member of this consortium, etc.
I think one of the things that is really beautiful about the consortium is that it helps us to bring many relationships that we have into one network.
I think the consortium has been very instrumental in creating a network of concerned people, looking at it in a more comprehensive way. Look at education, gender, ecology in a more integrated way. So I think the consortium can play a major role there.
In fact, the POCJA has allowed our consortium to widen its reach because we invited individuals in addition to institutions. With the POCJA, the consortium is on the right path to the future.
Menurut kami memang sangat baik ya, misalnya karena ini ada salah satu POCJA yang concern pada isu gender dan agama. Ini butuh strategi khusus juga karena yang terlibat banyak pihak dari lintas organisasi.
But if we want to talk with the people or public and build the public opinion, we need to translate the words. Our motivation to change the society is not in the revolution way. The transformation will be evolution.
The challenge is how to engage the faith communities, the local faith, or how to at least make sure that somehow the insights, the knowledge affect the faith communities, or at least the faith communities will be inspired by the broadening of the horizon.
Of course, the conference should not end with the conference, of course, and publication. It is also very important to discuss how to implement what we have in the conference in the reality, in our life.
The government cannot work alone. Civil society cannot work alone. The religious organization cannot work alone. So we have to collaborate together, because we live in an imperfect world. In this respect, NICMCR can act as a bridge and play a role in helping improve understanding and strengthen the value of inclusivity.
Saya juga akan mendorong riset-riset aksi dan usulan program kepada konsorsium tentang pentingnya menggali kembali local knowledge, local wisdom, atau praktek-praktek keagamaan lain untuk menjaga lingkungan.
I hope and I pray that this consortium will stick on its goal. The partnership, for me, it is a distinction the consortium brings in these efforts. A partnership between Netherlands and Indonesia, but also partnership between Muslim and Christians, and maybe we will have the other religious people, not only Muslim and Christian, but the other religious people, such as the indigenous people and the other religious people.
We expect that in the future, NICMCR can play its role more wider and bigger, become catalyst or mediator in building inter-religious relation, inter-religious dialogue in Indonesia and in the Netherlands, also in the midst of conflict, also trying to embrace those who are radicals and we can say left wings of both religions.
Saya mengucapkan selamat ulang tahun yang ke-10. Semoga konsorsium ini terus menjadi wadah untuk terus mengembangkan dan menyuarakan perdamaian baik di Indonesia maupun di Belanda.
Okay, so we have heard best wishes for the NICMCR, and it is also our hope that the consortium will thrive in the future and that the consortium will build more bridges between Christianity and Islam and also other faiths as well, and strengthen the link, the connection between Indonesia and the Netherlands. Now we are about to start our first session. This is I think the core of the whole event. Now I'm gonna introduce our moderator, who's no stranger to us, based on the video. Yeah, he's been part of NICMCR since I think several years ago, or maybe from the very beginning. I don't know, but he's no stranger to all of us, or to most of us. The Professor Dr. Franz Weysen. Professor Dr. Franz Weysen is a professor of empirical and practical religious studies at Radboud University, Nijmegen, the Netherlands. He holds a PhD in theology from the Catholic University of Nijmegen, the Netherlands. So please join me in welcoming our moderator, the great Professor Dr. Franz Weysen. Professor Weysen, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Amadeo, for your kind introduction. Amber, thank you very much for your welcoming words, and Pak Sairon, thank you for your opening speech. To all of us, And to all those who participate, a happy birthday to our consortium. And as was seen in the video, we really made progress. Welcome to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, participants to this webinar on a very challenging topic, decolonizing religions in Indonesia and the Netherlands, unraveling the legacy of colonialism today. And I think I don't exaggerate when I say that this is really the core of our consortium. Just as a brief introduction, 2 weeks ago, there was a very interesting open letter to the editor of a Dutch daily newspaper. For those of you who are who know Dutch, the Trouw, written by a distinguished professor at Leiden University. This professor argued that the Dutch largely neglected their colonial past, that they have yet to cope with injustice, discrimination, and crimes committed during the colonial era in Dutch East Indies, at least what we call Dutch East Indies. And that the Dutch really need the Indonesian perspective to balance their one-sided Dutch perspective on history. This professor argued that it is strange that from the Dutch side, there is not much collaboration with Indonesia. And he also argued that it is urgent that the Indonesians get a chance to tell their story about colonialism in the Netherlands. Well, undoubtedly, this professor never heard about the Netherlands-Indonesia Consortium for Muslim-Christian Relations, because this is exactly what we have been doing for the past 10 years. And by the way, our coordinator, June, invited the professor from Leiden to participate in our consortium, but unfortunately, he was not available today. This is exactly what we have been doing over the past 10 years. And being a consortium on Muslim-Christian relations, we are not so much interested in the general colonial history. Of course, that is also interesting and that is part of our debates. But we are more interested in the very construction of religion, the image that we construct about each other, the image of Christians about Muslims, Muslims about Christians, and of course, our general concept of religion. And of course, we are well aware that the Dutch imposed their view of religion in a Dutch context to the context of Indonesia. And we are still talking about that today. And that is the topic that we are going to discuss. But I think unlike the Leiden professor, who says, well, the Dutch need the Indonesian perspective, I think what we have stressed in our consortium, and I think that was also mentioned. Okay, I see a question in the chat. It was Rick Ronings, professor for special collections at Leiden University. That was a question in the chat box. But what I want to stress is that this professor stressed very much how the Dutch need the Indonesians. But I think what we stress in our consortium is that it is really a partnership. We need each other. And we talk about each other. The Indonesians need the Dutch perspective and the Dutch need the Indonesian. Having said this, I opened this webinar and I really want to introduce now our two speakers about this webinar. We will have two presentations by distinguished scholars in the field, Zainal Abedin Bagir. I think you can show now their biodata, Master of Ceremony.
Yes,
and Robert
thank you, Franz.
Satio. So we have two speakers. They will speak about 10 minutes. After that, we will have a short break, and then there will be two respondents. I will introduce them later. I expected now biodata on the two speakers. If not, I think Pak Zainal and Pak Robert don't need a long introduction because they participate in our consortium from the very beginning. Pak Zainal is affiliated to the UGM, Yogyakarta, and he presently is the director of the Indonesian Consortium for Religious Studies. Pak Robert is presently the Dean of the Faculty of Theology at UKDW, and as we saw in the introduction, UKDW and Kerk in Actie really were the the initiators of our beautiful network, of which we celebrate the 10th anniversary today. Pak Zainal, the floor is yours. 10 minutes. Sorry, I now make a mistake. Pak Robert will start.
Okay.
Pak Robert will start. Pak Robert, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pak Frans. By now, your Indonesian is getting better, and you are just shy to use Indonesian in front of Indonesian people. But later on, I hope you can be brief enough to show that you are expert in Indonesian, Bahasa Indonesia. First of all, I would like to thank you to colleagues who have been here in the consortium since the very beginning, especially colleagues from Kerk in Actie, Bu Corrie van der Ven. We have to mention your name because you are such an important person, even though you always try to hide yourself from the other people, but you are an important person. And also the others, like Pak Leo, who also was very active, especially to draft the rule, the principles of this consortium. But this afternoon, this morning, even this evening for the Eastern Indonesian colleagues, afternoon for the Western Indonesian colleagues, and morning for the colleagues in the Netherlands, we are going to talk about a topic that is rarely touched or talked during our meetings as the consortium. But we realize that this topic is very important nowadays. And as the first video shown to us that, we were triggered, especially by the problem of Black Lives Matters in the US and others who really shake us and question our integrity, whether we are as we are without any burden of history, burden of colonialism, or should we even make a kind of reflection, self-criticism about ourselves. I want to share just a brief points. Oh, now can it be shown? Yeah, okay, I will try once again if it works. Yeah, okay. So decolonization in relation to religion has become a hot topic of discussions among academics and cultural activists. But the echo is still hardly heard in Indonesia, I'm afraid. If I'm not wrong, yeah, maybe other people have different opinion. Therefore, it should be suspected that the conception of religion in Indonesia is still dominated by colonial discourse or colonial understanding. And the suspicion is not without evidence. In Indonesia, the concept of religion was inherited from the colonial era, and until now, it has not been changed. In the study of religions, it is recognized that such the concept is much informed by Orientalist view, which could not do justice to all religions. Indigenous religions, for instance, may not be appropriately considered as religion when one uses the concept of religion that has been held by the government and received without questions by most of the people in this country. Now, decolonization needs to be carried out to answer these kinds of injustice. An understanding of what religion is must be open to all religions and should not depend on a few of dominant religions. The colonial character of religions in Indonesia is also evident in their failure to uncover the root causes of poverty, discrimination, and environmental crisis. Religions in Indonesia tend to divert people's attentions from the real worldly problems. Because of that, many social and environmental problems have never been properly resolved. Decolonization also needs to be directed at academia. Disciplines such as theology, studies of religions, comparative religion, phenomenology of religion, history of religion, philosophy of religion, sociology of religion, psychology of religion, anthropology of religion, and interreligious dialogue are all built on the concept that each has its own basis, purpose, and methodology. So each has its own nomenclature, one would say. Now, with the presence of interreligious studies, the situation is a bit changed. This study wants to get out of the compartmentalization that has been built and seen as normal thus far. Interreligious studies is also at the same time breaking the separation between the academic world and the more practical work of the community movement. But this endeavor is not without risks. It is possible that interreligious studies were excluded from the academic world and only seen as a social movement. Despite the challenge, interreligious studies should move forward with its inclusivity. This is something that goes along the line of the consortium that in the academia set up. We are now inspired by the consortium, especially me and Pak Zainal, who have been talking a lot of interreligious study, as a development of religious studies and as a development of theology. This is from me, Pak Franz Weisen. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Pak Robert, for your interesting speech. So your statement is that the concept of religion in Indonesia is still dominated by colonial discourse and needs to be decolonized. Undoubtedly, we are going to talk about that in our discussion period. I now give the floor to Zainal Bagir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pak Franz. Yeah, I would also like to share my, I have a few slides, but the first point that I will speak in this in the coming 10 minutes is first of all, I'd like to ask when we speak about decolonizing religion, what actually do we speak about? Since here the context is Netherlands, Indonesia conversation, we can easily be led to think that the main context is Dutch colonialism of Indonesia and its aftermath. This is not mistaken, but we need to also think that not all of what is going wrong or can be criticized today related to our topic, religion, can be blamed on Dutch colonialism. Indonesia has gone a long way since 1945 or 1949. After the Dutch left, there has been several periods of governance. There have also been intensive exchanges between Indonesians and other parts of the world, and some important dynamics related to the state of religion in Indonesia today. The next slide, please. Just to give a glance at the post-1945 history, which becomes the historical context of my points today, we can see several watershed events significant turning points which determine what happens next. Yeah, in this slide, I just show, this is a very simple summary of the history, of course. We can see how, well, after in 1945, there's independence and then constitutional debate about the place of religion in the state. And then soon after that, the establishment of Mora, which, which has important impacts on the state of religion in Indonesia. And then 1960s, the purge of the communists, the start of, the tensions between Christians and Muslims in some parts of Indonesia, and then also the start of interreligious dialogue, and then 1970s, 1980s, where the government promotes developmentalism and at the same time harmony, interreligious harmony for the sake of stability. And then 1998, the democratizations, but also at the same time violent conflicts, the inclusions of human rights in our constitution. And then today, many scholars call Indonesia is experiencing a democratic decline. So I'm showing this to show these several factors after 1945 to show that while history of colonialism is significant, it is not only, and in different areas of life, probably not the most important factor in explaining what we have today. Despite that caveat, I think decolonization is still a useful term to describe an attempt to undo imperialistic tendency, whether in terms of knowledge production or policy making. This is a tendency of superiority of one party enforcing one's view or interests or purpose on others which are weaker, a tendency which runs counter to any aspirations for equality among people of different identities and class, including aspirations for equal citizenship. In this understanding of decolonization, it is not difficult to find neo-colonialism long after the colonial era is over, as well as the so-called internal colonization within Indonesia. Like when one region of the country or one group of people, one race, one religious group, put themselves in a superior position over their fellow citizens and force their views on others. So I want to broaden the understanding of the colonial as well as decolonization to include phenomenon which we still see until today. So what needs decolonizing? So when we speak about decolonizing religion, what do we mean by it? What is religions? I understand the term religion here to refer to two main issues. That is governance of religion or governed religion and studies of religion. The first is about policy making or governed religion, and the second is about knowledge production or expert religion. So governed religion and expert religion, these are the terms I borrow from Elizabeth Shackman-Hurd in her book, Beyond Religious Freedom. But this contrast or typology has been used by many scholars. So I will be focusing on the governed religion and expert religion. So this typology, I think, helps to critically see that how the governed religion and expert religion are heavily politically constructed. Saying that they are construction does not mean that they are illusion or not real, but it invites us to see what works are at play in shaping the experience of religion in Indonesia. It is in these two instances that we find colonization and decolonization. So when we speak about governed religion, we can see several characteristics, which some of them started in the Dutch colonial era, but also continued through the Japanese occupation, the post-independence era, and through some historical periods are still with us today. So, for example, Robert has mentioned some of this, the narrow definition of religion, but also the shaping of other religions in the mold of Islam and Christianity, which are the two dominant forces, such that Hinduism and Buddhism, for example, was only recognized as religion only in 1952 in Indonesia, although they were with us much longer before Islam and Christianity. Pa Robert spoke about the non-recognition of indigenous religions. Again, the colonizer, he is not only the Christian Dutch, but also the modern or the modernist tendencies in all religions, including in Islam. And then the other features, probably in the first slide, can you go back to the previous slide, please? The other characteristics is what I call as the two faces of faith. That is the idea that there has always been two sides of religion, the good side and the bad side. The good sides are to be accommodated and the bad sides are to be repressed. And of course, we can see this quite evident since the time of Snoek-Hoogronje, for example. So in these examples, I hope I have shown my first point about the different influences which shape today's governance of religion in Indonesia. With regard to the studies of religion, and can you go to the next slide? Yeah, okay. So studies of religion is partly undertaken to serve the purpose of governed religion. It may inform the governed religion, but also shaped by the existing governed religion. But we should not forget here, I give the example of Snoek-Hoogronje, but actually there are also other forces which influence how religious studies is undertaken in Indonesia after 1945. For example, in 1970s, many Muslim students who want to study religion, they go to Western centers of learning, either Netherlands, but also the US, Canada, Australia. This took place to the extent that in the circles of Islamic universities, there was a saying that the Qibla of Islamic studies, the directions of Islamic studies had shifted from the Middle East to the West. But beyond methodological issues, we also see parallel developments in the Western countries and Indonesia, including the trend of decolonization. So the decolonization is not only done by the Indonesians, but also by others. So I give two examples here to research the politics of religion, written by Michel Picard, which has shown an attempt to self-interrogate, the scholars interrogate themselves, criticizing the categories of religion, for example, how this is distinguished from culture, from adat. So this kind of study shows the complexity and self-interrogations of how scholars understand religion. And one of them is with regard again to the indigenous religion. Among our students at CRCS and ICRS, it is interesting to see that this has become a very attractive area of study. For them, this interrogation of the very term religion, how it has been politically constructed by political as well as academic authorities, is quite an eye-opening. I give the example of the other book which NI CMCR published a few months ago, in which there are a few chapters looking at indigenous religions and using the paradigm of indigenous religion to show a different face of Indonesia. Next slide, please. So I have only 2 slides left, so I'm going to be quick. Another examples here I try to show studies of religion and human rights. So while the discourse among the authorities, it was popular for sometimes in Indonesia, Malaysia, but also China, the idea of putting human rights in opposition to Asian values. But we have seen also recent attempts to decolonize human rights, but not in the way which shows the superiority of one side. So in the case of Asian values, they try to say that human rights is Western, and now we have our own values, Asian values. But in this type of works, I showed 2 examples here. One is from a Muslim scholar, Abdullahi Ahmed and Naim, and the other one, Boaventura de Santos, who is a Latin American scholar, which I think both try to decolonize human rights, but in the sense of transforming it from state-centric enterprise into people-centric for An-Naim. And for Santos, he proposes a counter-hegemonic view of human rights. So I just give these 2 examples of how in the study of religion, this attempt at decolonizations have progressed quite far with these different examples. So I come to my final remarks now. So what I have tried to show is that while there is, we see some promising developments in the decolonizations of studies of religion done by not only by previously colonized people, but also by Western scholars who try seriously to interrogate themselves and their assumptions. But in terms, when it comes to governance of religion, we see that actually, despite major changes in political regimes, the old way of governing religions remain. I don't deny that there are some progresses, even in terms of governance of religion, for example, in the increasing recognition of indigenous religions in Indonesia. But we also see that the strategy of 2 phases of faith, dividing religion into the good and the bad part, and then accommodating one, repressing the others, it is still very much a political tactic used by not only by the Dutch before 1945, but also by several periods of Indonesian governments, and I have to say until today. And this is, I think this is where the main challenge for scholars of religious studies lie, that is in critiquing the present religious governance. So let me conclude this presentation by saying that, again, decolonization does not mean anti-Western. In the critical stance toward the so-called colonial or neo-colonial or internal colonization, we see that what is most problematic is the imperialistic motive, which wants to force one view on others or define what is acceptable for all. What is acceptable religion, for example, the good part, the bad part. Similarly, we have also seen that decolonizing effort has been developed in global studies of religion. So I think it is more productive to see the paths for cooperation between scholars in different parts of the world rather than advancing an oppositional parochial standpoint. So I stop my presentation there, and I know I go beyond 10 minutes, and yeah, I'm sorry for that.
Thank you very much, Pak Zainal, for your interesting presentation in which you broaden the concept of colonialism and decolonization, and you refer to the internal colonization and the ongoing imperialist tendency not only in Indonesia, but in the entire world, showing that in academia there are attempts at decolonizing both in West and the East, but old strategies of governance of religion remain. Well, I think interesting topics for our discussion. Maybe part of our imperialistic tendency is that we heard two men. Of course, we tried to balance, when we were preparing this webinar, we really tried to balance Muslim and Christian views, and we were successful in that. We heard a professor from the UKDW and a professor from UGM, from Islamic background. But we are happy that we now can balance this male-dominated perspective by two women. And we are proud to introduce Karen van den Broeke, who is affiliated to the Protestant Church in the Netherlands, and Jus Saidia Boersma, who is affiliated to the special branch of Nahdlatul Ulama in Belanda. We are very glad that you are willing to give a response to those two men who introduced the topic to us, and we are really looking forward to what you are going to say. First, I give the floor to Karen van den Broeke. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Frans. Good afternoon, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak a few words during this celebration. Terima kasih banyak. It's an honor to celebrate with all of you the 10th anniversary of the Netherlands-Indonesia Consortium for Muslim-Christian Relations. And the theme of this celebration is a theme that comes close to the heart of Kerk in Actie, being part of the Protestant Church in the Netherlands. Kerk in Actie is called to serve churches and partner organizations worldwide by sharing what we received on the basis of equality and reciprocity. Sharing what we received on the basis of equality and reciprocity. It sounds really nice and very ambitious. The question for today seems to me, from whom did we receive what we have, and what does reciprocity mean? NICMCR brings together perspectives from Indonesia and the Netherlands, from Muslims and Christians, for a better understanding of a shared history in order to prepare for a post-colonial future. And today we try to unravel the legacy of colonialism, especially in our churches. Presenting the Dutch perspective, the Dutch Christian perspective on our shared history, I could mention a variety of positive signs. There's an increasing awareness that wealth in the Netherlands is built on a history of slavery. There's also a growing acknowledgement of the deeply rooted consequences of colonialism, for instance, for the self-understanding of both the colonized and the colonizers and their descendants. However, asking the question, how far have we come? I have to admit that still a lot needs to be done. Just as Pak Robert mentioned, it is a hot topic among academics and cultural activists, but the echo is hardly heard in the rest of the society. In the Netherlands, at the congregational level, there's a lot of ignorance. Many Christians in local churches are very friendly and benevolent people who didn't come across the perspectives of people from former colonized countries. Of course, they know a little bit about our shared history, but they did not really share time, experience, and life stories with people from former colonized countries that made them aware of the wounds of history and of the effects up to now. The lived religion, as Pak Zainal called it, needs the input of different perspectives. So What do we plan to achieve? Kerk in Actie is called to serve churches and partner organizations by sharing what we received on the basis of equality and reciprocity. This means, in the first place, that we have to acknowledge that sharing has to do with justice, not with charity. Sharing gifts on the basis of charity could cause overlooking the genesis of inequalities. Sharing gifts on the basis of justice demands visiting the wounds and aiming for transformation of injustices. We aim for justice, and justice means liberation for all of us. It was only a few weeks ago that a white man who had lived in Indonesia for a few years told me, "I'm always a representative of colonialism." And this short sentence made me realize what reciprocity means. Overcoming colonialism means liberation for all of us. A post-colonial future strengthens the self-esteem of all people involved. Indonesia has been a multi-religious country for centuries. For the Netherlands, it's helpful to take note of the Indonesian point of view. The backgrounds of Islam and Christianity in the context of Indonesia differ a lot.
Helicopter, helicopter.
With their backgrounds in the context, don't know what happened. The backgrounds of Islam and Christianity in the context of Indonesia differ a lot with their backgrounds in the context of the Netherlands. Revealing these differences could be a good starting point for broadening the Dutch perspective on the opportunities of trusting and sustainable relationships. Peaceful coexistence of the different religions is so important for justice and peace on earth. I'm eager to hear what the outcome of this celebration will be. For now, I express the Is it okay by now?
We clearly hear you now. Yeah, we hear you now.
Not,
yeah.
It is not. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
There was a problem. I heard so.
We hear you now. We hear you now. Just continue your talk.
We can hear you. We can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes, but
just continue, Karen.
I don't know.
Carry on, Karen. Carry on.
You couldn't hear me anymore, so I'll go back.
But I can't hear you.
Well, let me go back to the point.
Shut up.
So what do we plan to achieve? Kerk in Actie is called to serve churches and partner organizations by sharing what we received on the basis of equality and reciprocity. This means, in the first place, that we have to acknowledge that sharing has to do with justice, not with charity. Sharing gifts on the basis of charity could cause overlooking the genesis of inequalities. Sharing gifts on the basis of justice demands visiting the wounds and aiming for transformation of injustices. We aim for justice, and justice means liberation for all of us. It was only a few weeks ago that a white man who had lived in Indonesia for a few years told me, "I'm always a representative of colonialism." And this short sentence made me realize what reciprocity means. Overcoming colonialism means liberation for all of us. A post-colonial future strengthens the self-esteem of all people involved. Indonesia has been a multi-religious country for centuries. For the Netherlands, it's helpful to take note of the Indonesian point of view. The backgrounds of Islam and Christianity in the context of Indonesia differ a lot with their backgrounds in the context of the Netherlands. Revealing these differences could be a good starting point for broadening the Dutch perspective on the opportunities of trusting and sustainable relationships. peaceful coexistence of the different religions is so important for justice and peace on earth. I'm eager to hear what the outcome of this celebration will be. For now, I express the hope that we together embrace the chances to decolonize religion, to liberate all of us from oppressing beliefs and attitudes. Thank you. Is there a problem again?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Karen, for your response. Talking from a Dutch perspective, from your experience in the Dutch churches, showing that there is still quite some ignorance about colonialism, but also arguing for reciprocity. Earlier we heard the term partnership, learning from each other, and you asked the question, from whom did we receive what we have now, and what does reciprocity mean? I think an interesting question for our discussion. Last but not least, I give the floor to Jus Sadia to give a response to what the speakers said.
Thank you, Franz. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I greet you all with peace. After listening all the methodology and academics terminology, I'm going to bring you to the ground level, to the practice. In this time, I would like to, my slide is not working. Okay, the slide start at the slide 2. Okay, decolonizing the mind. Hold on, I need to. Can you see the slide now? Right. Okay, before we, I believe that before we can reach to the level of decolonizing religious, decolonizing academics, decolonizing museum, decolonizing human rights, what we heard from Pak Zen earlier, we need to start from ourselves, decolonizing the mind. This is the meaning what I'm going to say to you is something that Quijano or Walter Minulo mentioned in their books. This is something that a process to deconstruct our thoughts, preference, and values that derive from the colonial way of thinking. So as a guide at the museum, Colonial Museum in Arnhem, I often engage a discussion with the public about colonialism. So the general view I often hear is that, oh yeah, it's long time ago. It's always it started. It's long time ago. We did it. Everybody else was doing it. The whole Europe was doing it, and it was at that time normal. And apologizing for colonial history is unnecessary. And the sentiment, unfortunately, is not uncommon. And the next slide, I will show you the survey that's done by YouGov. Here you can see the Dutch is very proud of their colonial history. It's unique compared with the European countries. 50% the Dutch are proud of their colonial history, and 6% ashamed of the history. While Japan is the only non-European countries here, Japanese are 20% of them are ashamed of the colonial history. And then moreover, the Dutch wish to retain the empire, while it is the British are higher, but it's significant number. So why this is happening? First is basically refusal to confront or to acknowledge the colonial atrocity is very strong in the Netherlands. And what surprisingly, since I been here for quite some time, I was very shocked. In 2006, the Balkenende was really preaching the terminology of VOC mentaliteit. And at that time, of course, there was two opposing opinion about it. But this is very remarkable, as you know, a clear gesture from the highest pulpit in the Netherlands, applauding for VOC. And just not some time ago, Rutte also mentioned when he was asked about the removal of Jan Pieterszoon Koen in a tall statue in Hoorn, and he said that, I quote, "Be careful to judge Koen with our current day perception and argue that Koen needed to be seen in that time and in that context." So this is very, although general view is shifting, but this is very stubborn, I would say, opinion in general view. And often the Dutch, when you ask on the street about VOC, they would proudly mention, oh, it's a trade endeavor, and they were very adventurous, looking beyond border. And this is the value that they wish always to adopt and to look up to. And but little the Dutch know, VOC is a bad news for the archipelago, because the entire fabric of society was woven by trade. I mean, the Indonesian, the way we speak, our religion, our cuisine, the cloth, everything was by trade. And the Hindu, Buddha, Islam, Confucianism, everything came by trade. And VOC brought completely different. They brought firearms, monopoly, octroi, and so it is something that is completely foreign. So this is a lot of things is problematic, and the colonial hangover in the Dutch society is still being felt in our time. Earlier you heard about the Black Lives Matter, but here what persistently being a debate. Almost we had 2 days to go for the Sinterklaas. The Black Pit debate is very, although the opinion is shifting, but very slow. So the past could not be erased, but must be acknowledged. There are more surveys that if anyone to find out more, I'll be happy to share about what is the public opinion on the removal of the statue and the curriculum among the high school on the history, the colonial history. So I'm not going to dwell on the Dutch side, because in Indonesian side, decolonizing the mind is still very far. Franz, would you let me know when I have to shut up?
2 minutes, yes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes left.
Right. So the colonial baggage, the colonial mentality exists, all without, saying it without playing the victimhood card. Either general view, when you ask people on the street in Indonesia, oh, it's a long time ago, we don't look back, we look forward, we forgive all the colonialists. But this is a noble character, of course, but it's a fool, because the colonial mentality is still seeped through in society. Recently, there was a lady quarreling in the airport saying, my daddy is a general with a 3-star. And this speech shows that the modality of one function and one social stature being used to instill fear and intimidate other, it's very colonialist. So this is a lot of instances like, have you ever thought why the skin whitening product is popular among Indonesia, and why the preference for fair skin is still very strong among Indonesia even. So without realizing it, there are many things that we as a formal colonized people internalize the discourse of all things Western, all things white being superior than everything what we know and what we are. So this is first to decolonize the mind within ourselves, within Indonesia, is recognizing the pattern of colonialism. And there's a lot of instances that we can learn from what is KNIL, the colonial Nederlandse-Indisch leger, the Dutch colonial army.
Yes, before you go into that, come to a conclusion.
So we'll come to conclusion, but I want to show you the basically tie it in with our theme today, religion, decolonizing religion. But Robert mentioned about decolonizing religion in terms of the terminology and also understanding about it. But then how was religion being portrayed in Europe in year 30s? So what you're seeing now is the Bisbal, is the ancestral statue. The picture you're seeing here is from K. Bromley Museum in Paris. There are plenty standing in the Volkenkunde Museum and Tropo Museum in Amsterdam. So basically, there are more Bisbals in Europe than in Papua, because this is not being made anymore. This is the culture is already almost abandoned, and why it never should be never stand in a museum, because the indigenous people, when they, after completion the whole ceremony of this making and then ceremony of the death, they would usually return this bowl back to where it was taken. So they selected special wood, mangrove wood, and they would return it back. So it's part of cradle to cradle, back to nature.
Yes, we have run out of time. Can you come to a conclusion?
What I wish to show is this is how the colonialist, the museum back then, portraying the indigenous people, and that it fits with the ground mission of civilizing the people back in the colony. So museum has a lot of things to do to decolonize themselves, to show the European public what the indigenous are really are, and not as a primitive, backward, savage, wild, and ungodly practices, and that the missionary need to civilize them, or the colonial government need to civilize them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, yes, for your interesting presentation, in which, well, on the one hand, you confirm what Karen just said, that there is an ongoing ignorance and denial of our colonial past. On the other hand, also interesting attempts to decolonize, and maybe that is a good summary of our whole webinar. That we see, on the one hand, there is an ongoing colonization, there is an ongoing imperialist mind, both in the Netherlands and in Indonesia, but we also see quite interesting attempts to go beyond this imperialism in academia, but also at grassroots level. So thank you very much. And you see that we try to balance. We had 2 male speakers, we had 2 female speakers from Christian and Muslim perspectives from Indonesia and the Netherlands. So maybe that is also an attempt to go beyond imperialist views. Well, we run out of time a little bit. We have still 15 minutes. And there are many questions in the chat, and I don't think that it is wise to read all of them. Moreover, most of them are in Bahasa Indonesia, and my knowledge of Bahasa Indonesia is still limited. So I would say just raise your hand if you have a question. I saw, let me just invite one of the persons who wrote in the chat, maybe Yanni. Can you please summarize your question that you raised in the chat? Yanni, are you there? No response. Then there is a long question from Lauren Karina. Are you still there? No response. Anshu, you raise your question. Go ahead. Unmute your microphone.
Yeah. No, I'm succeeded, Prof.
They are not actually questions. They are like translations from the speech to Indonesian.
Okay. Okay. Oh, this in there. Okay. Yanni, you were there. Ariani, are you there?
Yeah, Prof. Okay, Prof. I have questions.
Try to be brief, Yanni.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. After I heard those four speakers, I interest in the terminology of decolonizations and how we would like to interpret the decolonization in practices without taking the everyday knowledge as it is coming from the ordinary people. What I see from the presentation of Pak Robert and Pak Zain, Pak Robert is more talk about the academic interfaith relation, while Pak Zain excluded the everyday relation. So based on this two argument, I think I'm quite pessimistic to say that we will decolonizing our mind. So maybe we need a reflection for the methodological thinking to transform our thinking to the others. That's all, Prof. Thank you.
Okay, I give Zainal and Robert the chance to respond to it later. I see a question from Dika.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Dika. I'm a PhD student right now at ISS. My question is, in decolonizing thinking, we're often asked to decenter our focus from the center of knowledge productions to the margins. So first question is, if we want to decolonize religion, and assumingly we say the center of Islam, for example, is often seen in Mecca, where should the decentering, where should the locus of decentering be placed then in decolonizing Islam? And second, how do we avoid this decolonizing process from getting into being appropriated for consolidations of power, which we often see in Indonesian politics? Thank you very much.
Okay, then a last question. I see a raised hand by Sahiron and then Anshu. Sahiron, can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Franz. Yeah, I have one question. Just we know that everybody has his own or her own subjectivity, including in when he or she conducts a research about religion, for example. Then the question is, how can researchers appoint their subjectivity? This is the first one. The second one, the Indonesian government right now has a very good, I think, a very good program in relation to the attempt to to build a harmonious living together. I mean, between followers of different religions. The program is called Moderasi Beragama, moderation of religious understanding, something like that. And it is, I think, it is very related to what we are discussing right now, about the colonization of religion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sairon. Anshu?
Yes, thank you, Pak Frans. I would like to ask a question in relation to the core of our business of this consortium, bringing up some comments from people whose religions I would call indigenous religions, identifying conversions, proselytizations to imperialism. So if their question, if their argument is that the current imperialists today, up to now, is basically Muslims and Christians who keep proselytizing us. If that is question is brought to us, only Muslims, Christians gathering here, talking about decolonizations, subjectifying ourselves, empowering ourselves, bringing ideas, how to answer that questions. Thank you, Pak Frans.
Okay, well, interesting question. I return the floor to Zainal and Robert first. Zainal, could you address some of the methodological questions? How to bring in the grassroots perspectives and how overcome intersubjectivity?
Yeah, well, I'd like to respond first to Yannis' question, which who accused me of excluding everyday religion, but actually, I think that's not my intention. I mentioned it as one of the 3 types of religion, but indeed I didn't discuss it because of the limitations of time. But I think methodologically speaking, everyday religion is a key strategy of decolonization, because it tries to break free from existing categories, including, for example, the categories of religion, whether that's governed religion or expert religion. So we have seen works which focuses on using this approach of everyday religion in criticizing colonized categories. I may give examples. One of it is, for example, Anna Gates' study of Islam and environment, Muslim environmentalism. And she is very critical of the existing categories which are used to explain the phenomenon of in her area of study, Islam and environment. And for her, one key strategy, one key decolonial strategy is exactly to approach the subject of study using everyday religion approach. So, yeah, I think that's important. With regard to the question about from Dika, the second question, I hope I get it right. How to avoid from the mobilization of political power using this idea of decolonization. So I may point again to my example of decolonizing human rights, which are seen by many as Western, etc. So the elite political power may criticize human rights and at the same time advancing Asian values. I think that's not decolonization at all. This is just replacing one form of colonization with another imperialistic tendency, imagining that there is something like Asian values which are used to, well, I mean, the examples in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in China, advancing this rhetoric of Asian values to repress their own citizens. So it may happen, but I also give the example of two scholars. One is an African, the other one Latin American scholar, who tries to rethink human rights as a counter-hegemonic enterprise, or as shifting from the state-centric to people-centric issue. So I think these two give examples of the same subject, in this case, human rights, which are regarded by some as Western, and then decolonized, but one using it for the interests of their own political power, like in 1980s in Indonesia, Malaysia, China, but the other ones have different ideas. So I hope that answers.
Okay, can I ask Robert to answer the Anshu's question, because we are running a bit of time out of time. Robert, are we as a consortium not imperialistic because we exclude indigenous voices in our consortium?
Yeah, but at the same time, we are criticizing ourselves. That's the also important step, yeah, because we are not just talking about ourselves, about the others, but how to look at ourselves as maybe guilty, people who have to repent, to use religious language. That's most important. And because who else, what other religions have the burden of guilt as much as Christianity and Islam, especially in this country, being the dominating religions. Yeah, one. Second, I guess, yeah, this also demands what you call constructing self, yeah, of religious organization, especially. What I mean is, usually when we talk about religions, religious organization, preachers like myself, always see ourselves as the bearer of God's knowledge. Yeah, so we are true, and the others need to be enlightened by us. So this is this attitude needs to be changed. First of all, yeah, I agree with Yanni. There is no change without the change of paradigm or perspective. So it needs to be the first step, yeah, that we have to be humbling ourselves and admit that we are not, just like what we think, the bearer of knowledge. Now the knowledge are there with the others, even our enemy. Yeah, I am happy, even though my colleague Kerit Singhi will criticize me in this matter, that with the radical people, this is also a call for us to understand what they are thinking. Judging from the outside would be misleading, but most importantly, this misleading is about us ourselves, not about radicals. So we trick ourselves with our understanding of those radicals, that they are those people who have the change. Yeah, so that's why my criticism Pak Sairon to the moderation program. I know this is very important in order to respond to conservatism and fundamentalism and radicalism in Indonesia. But what I'm worried is if it is too much, it becomes like a choir. The whole nation say the same thing, then we don't see ourselves as those who have to understand at the first place what is radicalism, something that can also appear in our own mind. You know, it is not just about the others who do that, but also something that is inbuilt in ourselves. The thing that we need to do. Of course, the epistemology injustice has to be addressed too, like Yani said. So we have to do. Yeah, so this is something that from the grassroots people, the everyday life of the people, have to understand them. So anyway, the understanding that we understand should be criticized. Now we have to be in the position that we don't understand, and we need to understand more, even about ourselves, I guess. Hope I'm not preaching, Franz. So sorry. Oh yeah, maybe Franz need to be unmuted by the committee.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Robert, for your reflection. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of this webinar. If I would allow a second round of questions, then I think we can continue for an hour. And I think what we discussed is that, yeah, colonization and decolonization are ambiguous terms, but also the processes, the societal processes that they refer to are quite ambiguous. We deal with internal colonization, international decolonization. We deal with the colonization of the mind. But I think what we learned, and I think all consortium members agree on, is that we really need each other. And unlike the professor that I quoted in the beginning, who wrote that very interesting letter in Trouw, who said the Dutch need the Indonesians, I think we as a consortium realize that we need each other to decolonize our minds. And I'm sure that this will be an ongoing dialogue within our consortium. I think this was a quite interesting webinar, maybe too short, but also looking at my clock and realizing that Indonesia, for East Indonesia, it is already late in the evening. I think it's good for all of us that we close this webinar. Once again, I thank you, the presenters, the respondents, and also the participants in this webinar. And I give the floor back to the Master of Ceremony now. Amadeo.
Thank you very much. I was still muted. Thank you, Professor Wyson, and all speakers and panelists for your outstanding remarks, and also for your presentations and for your responses to the questions we had in the floor, and to those addressing you all verbally. It is true that we should continue, we should embark on this ongoing process of decolonization. And I'm grateful that the Netherlands, right now, at least our friends, our Dutch friends in Indonesia, and also our Dutch friends in the Netherlands, whom we know, are helping us in the decolonizing or the decolonization process so far. So we should continue this, and we should, as Professor Wyson said earlier in his closing remarks, that the Dutch and Indonesian societies should work alongside each other to put an end to decolonization, be it the decolonization of our land or the decolonization of our minds. And I also noticed that somebody said something about the skin whitening products, something that also leaves me cold whenever I go to supermarkets, grocery stores. Skin whitening products are everywhere, which mirror our inferiority as non-Caucasians, non-Westerners. And yeah, we should gradually free ourselves from that colonial burden. So thank you once again, everyone. And of course, from the bottom of my heart, happy 10th anniversary, happy birthday to the Netherlands-Indonesia Consortium on Muslim-Christian relations. I hope that this consortium will continue to flourish, will continue to help one another in paving the path to peace and to interreligious amity or friendliness. Thank you very much, and I think we will all be kept updated on any activity or any program conducted by the Netherlands-Indonesia Consortium on Muslim-Christian relations. So yeah, just keep yourself posted and updated on what comes next from this consortium. A great 10 years. Thank you very much. And now, as we're closing the gate, in the rundown, it is said closing gate. So we're gonna close the gate. We're gonna watch a closing video as all of us leave this Zoom meeting platform. Amadeo Devinu Dampo here, thanking you for your participation in this webinar and also celebration. Don't forget that we are celebrating this consortium's 10th anniversary. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your participation in NICMCR's 10th anniversary webinar, Decolonizing Religions in Indonesia and the Netherlands, Unravelling the Legacy of Colonialism Today. You can visit our website nicmcr.org or UIN Sunan Kalijaga YouTube channel for the recording of today's webinar. Thank you and see you next time.